For those looking to better ourselves and our world.
This fire inside
Be
me.
real with yourself.
Are you happy?
This is the Showing Up podcast.
Very creative time.
That focus.
People have to lead with their courage.
Be decided and say, yes, I'm really happy.
The big waves are not going to stop for a while.
We are into highest manifestation.
These are the voices of unicorns,
potential and high potential. They're both in high potential.
encouraging us all
never being too small.
to do the thing and fully show up for this one wild and precious life. I'm your host, Lindsay Dyer. This is the Showing Up podcast. Awesome. We are live. Hi, everybody. Checking in on the 3rd of June, 2020. What a crazy day. What a crazy week. I'm also checking in from the middle of an insane thunderstorm here in Jackson. Couldn't even get on there for a second because the connection was so crazy. Lots of storms going on in the world today. I'm really excited about this episode. We're taking things deep. I'm about to bring on Rosie Cutter, who is beyond an expert astrologist and international musician. She is someone who's leading the charge in some big changes and does over 1,000 readings a year for people to help them navigate what's going on in their life in one of the most ancient forms of science, arguably. And we're going to hear what astrology is, how it can help you, and also, how it relates to what's going on in the world today. So thanks for hanging out and bringing in Rosie.
Hey,
What up, my friend?
how's it going?
Whew. It's hot. It's heavy. It's big stuff going on in our world. I think all for the better, but it is. We are in it.
Yeah, we are in it for sure. It's good for everybody to take some deep breaths and know that this is a very special time. This isn't the minor leagues right now. There are some very special things happening in the world. And yeah, I think everyone is having a big shift for the better, but man, I'm kind of surprised at the volatility and how easy it is to feed into that fire. And so some of the things that we're going to talk about are even about the astrology coming up, what I've been studying and learning. And this sort of fire is unfortunately not going out anytime soon. So maybe we can look at some ways and tools that people can use to not get swept up, in the avalanche of anger and rage. Not that it's not righteous, but you can do a lot more work in the world than dead. And then have to come back and be a baby again and all these things. So the point is to stay in the video game as long as possible. So please don't riot. But how are you doing? You said it's storming over there?
Yeah, very, very good point. There's a lot that leads us to into the fray, but we got to hang out for the long haul and make the big change for the long term. Thanks for saying that. Would you start by sort of giving an overview of what astrology is and then how you came about it?
Sure. So I would say that astrology is a philosophical perspective on astronomy. Actually, Galileo and all the great astronomers were astrologers as well. And they wrote their own different musings and books about what they felt each of these planetary alignments meant. Now, keep in mind, this is how we used to predict the weather, and it is how we still sail around the world. It is the great clock of the sky. So it's an actual physical measurement, and even in certain times in history, which now is one, there can be certain oppositions or pulling that happen that actually create more earthquakes and land changes as well, as above, so below. So if people think about it in a practical level, and there's some really interesting studies, even the government's on this, the moon, right? The moon has this pull, energetic, gravitational, whatever's going on. It makes the tides rise and fall quite a bit. and it makes women's bodies swell, and it makes men's bodies swell as well. We'll get back to that. And it makes women's bodies actually shed, right? This is a pulling nature of having your monthly cycle. So there's a pull that's like you're going to throw a ball into the ocean. It has a ripple effect. The moon is close, and it has that much of an effect, but it's tiny. Mars, energetically, physically, is huge. So in Vedic astrology, in Asia, if you go to a doctor, even now, they're going to ask you your birthday. They're going to read your pulse. You can do a lot of medical diagnosis through hand and palm reading, which was one of my first loves. And so there's this effect that it has on us. And even men's brains swell during the new moon. Men get crabby sometimes too. But they did these studies and they couldn't figure out why emergency room rates skyrocket every full moon, 911 calls. And in Ayurvedic medicine or Chinese medicine, mental illness is always a result of a displacement of vata. So the brain is like a big ball of goo, right? It's like a big slimy ball. It's supposed to stay wet. But in high elevation places like here, Aspen, Jackson, the Himalayas, or in times of great heat, right? Dryness, people get more irritated. The brain actually swells, and that's a sign of mental illness because the liquid gets thinned out. And people, when they have swollen brains, which can also come through alcohol and drug abuse as well, because it creates a lot of inflammation, it makes you go crazy. So, I mean, are you crazy because you're crazy, or are you crazy because you're a werewolf and the moon came out? I don't know, but it's kind of, interestingly enough, go hand in hand. And then even like physically around the palm reading, all the lines in your palm you're born with, and the lines in your palm can change. So when women get pregnant, on their lifeline, they always get a circle. If it's more circular, it's a boy. If it's more oblong, it's a girl. You can see disease, you can see discoloration. And I have books that show the lines in your palm are so intricately connected to your nervous system that when they took people and gave them electroshock therapy, which where are we that it's okay in this realm to volt electricity into people's brains? You guys will that later. They would do the palm prints before and after. And beforehand, you have lots of little lines. Afterwards, they would have thousands. It would look like it exploded, the entire palm in disarray. So that goes to show how intricately connected we are electrical beings. You know, you're a car, you're made of water and oil, and the oil needs to be changed, you know, in the form of your blood and your gallbladder and, you know, your brain and staying moist and hydrated. But it's all very fascinating things. And actually, if you go into certain secret services and agencies, I mean, the first things they teach you is iridology, how to read somebody's eye to see their health, palm reading, body language. You can see so many things about people. I mean, I can know everything about somebody just from seeing their birthday online, you know?
Wow, there was so much information just right there. Yeah. I have a whole day of questions. That makes so much sense too.
It's like skiing or surfing. I mean, there's an energetic. I mean,
why do so many people poo-poo it and call it not real and all of that? Like what's going on there?
Well, first of all, I think people
are square, like certain, or like, how could you, like, shame, you know?
Well, I think, okay, first of all, it's all over the Bible. God divided the sky into 12 houses. Jupiter and Saturn would appear, and a king would be born, a great king. I mean, come on. So it's, I think part of it is, people get crappy readings. People come to me all the time and they're like, I went to a palm reader, did a psychic, and she told me I'm never going to find love. And I'm like, well, she's full of crap because that's not how it works. And I think of it as more of a, you know, like a ski forecast. We can't make there be 5 foot of powder. I can stand here in my ski suit in it's still 90 degrees here, and be sweating my butt off, pissed off, or I can read the signs and the weather around me and then be smart enough to pay attention to those patterns, know when the snow is coming, be ready for the snow and the weather pattern to come. Because if I'm well rested and I have nice gear and I'm with you 5 foot of powder can be great.
Well, and if you've been doing the work, if you're strong enough, if you've been training in uncomfortable circumstances before that, so that you have that
physically, mentally, emotionally, especially with nature. If I take Amy Winehouse out, strung out on heroin, and drop her off in 5 foot of powder in the backcountry, what's going to happen? Same circumstances, disastrous. So I've used astrology to navigate things. I think that the public poo-poos it partially because I think that, the upper class is like that. Knowledge is power, right? The greatest way to keep somebody a slave is to not let them know who they really are. Slave is to not let them know who they really are. And I could tell you stories all the way from history, even to, thousands of years ago. There was always courthouse astrologers, and there was a new king that was going to be born. And he told the queen at the time, if you can keep that baby in, and they had whatever kind of herbs they had, or I don't know what they did. If you can keep that baby in for another day, he will become one of the greatest living emperors of all time because of the astrological conjunction. And she did, and it became Alexander the Great. I mean, they have, Princess Diana have a C-section so that she can have the baby at a certain time in a certain place on the summer solstice. 9 of clubs, 9 of spades, William. I mean, it's
so
just
what I hear you saying is like the people highest in power are absolutely using this, but they're keeping it quiet. You
can go to Dubai. Yeah, in the Middle East, like fortune telling or divination of any kind is still punishable by jail. And I have a lot of friends from Ibiza that live in Dubai and stuff sometimes. And it's literally still a book on the laws. Yet all the sheikhs have astrologers and gypsies to tell the cards for their horses. And it's so wouldn't you use anything at your avail to keep power and money? And then that also, it gets a bad rap, and it's not that simple. And just like a therapist, God, if you, just like a doctor, just like an accountant, if you get the wrong one, so I think it's a little bit of that. And also I think people have a blowback to like that things are predestined. And that's where I'm like, that's not really actually how it works. Because if I see something quote unquote negative and I say, hey, there's this possibility of being ripped off, but on the high side, you're at your all-time talent and you're being in front of lots of people and you're making lots of money and signing contracts, but just be careful. Once again, we're skiing that 5 foot of powder, the risk margin is smaller. Then I say something to them, and then they check because all the readings are recorded, and so they go back and they're like, hey Rosie, the other person wasn't trying to rip me off in the contract, but the accountants made a mistake and it would have held back production and cost a lot of money. So it's like you can avert disaster. When I'm surfing, here comes the overhead set. You have to put some energy into those bigger movements. It's, if you're not paying attention, that's when you get screwed. And that's why, I feel like a lot of people feel disempowered or like they don't have control over their life, or we've all got these degrees and all these different things, and it's not the game we were kind of sold. So astrology can show you your talents or how to make more money. Yes. So I am definitely from New York, and money talks and bullshit walks. And I've used it for years to help families and different people, but also my own career. And it's not foofy, but there is some good stuff in there too. If it says, you wouldn't believe how many times it says, literally word for word, here's your birthday. And it's that general, just the date even. Things happen to this person at ages 5 and 6 that cause them to retreat from trusting other people completely, which adds to the restless side of their personality, which in turn makes them very dynamic and love to travel. But it's this defense mechanism. And I say that to a person after knowing them for 10 minutes in Thailand. And they are like, something very intense happened at those ages. And then boom, it's like, it's a beautiful thing because maybe there is a greater plan. And it's not that we don't have any free will or control over it, but even the so quote unquote bad things were definitely for a higher purpose, so to speak. Yeah.
And you can be that person, that maybe one person in someone's life that sees them through these means, and they feel heard and they feel seen and they feel safer to exist. Yeah,
well,
I felt that.
Yeah, less blame too about certain things around childhood. some of the funny things in Western astrology, like one of the things that's helped me a lot is I would encourage everyone to look up the nodes of the moon. And so right now we're having a big shift in the world because the nodes of the moon just change direction, which happens every 18 months, which is about a year and a half. But everybody has their own personal north node. And if you look up your north node, there's these charts. And these charts are pretty much like everybody around 85 has the same one. And that goes and talks about your past lives and these like characteristics that you're overdeveloped in to the point now that it's holding you back. And sometimes it's really funny. I'm like, well, maybe I was a killer and a dictator in a past life. Maybe that is why I had to suffer in the beginning. You know, even if it's just a psychological experiment, it can be very interesting for sure.
And it can be just a little bit of like grace, a little bit of like maybe, you know, just shifting perspective. So that you get out of like, it can be pretty heavy trying to handle all of it, right? And it's so appropriate that someone like you, is sort of dishing out this real, this is like so real for people, right? Sometimes they've never heard anything like this that comes out of your mouth, right? Like that's got to be a crazy experience.
Yeah, a lot of business people and politicians and funny stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's powerful, and I am the cross of the unexpected in human design, so I'm here to bring unexpected perception and help people look at things differently, for sure. But I do find it very, some of the most touching is when I give it like a 75-year-old a reading, and they're like, I wish I knew this when I was younger. And not even that you would have avoided all the things, but there is a certain amount of understanding at the time where you can kind of save yourself from really self-flagellation or really beating a dead horse, so to speak, you know?
Exactly. That bit of grace in a different perspective from someone else's voice to like be seen, be heard. Thank you for that's what you do day in, day out. That's your office.
I know, yeah, either here or I do a lot of astrology parties and stuff, which is fun, or
that sounds fun.
Salons or galleries, and then I can do like little mini readings, which is nice. And then that's what I find too. The reason I think I'm so successful is A, because I'm so charming as an entertainer, but B, because like with the destiny card,
it's definitely your blonde hair and your big boobs. Let's call it what it is.
I said, hey guys, I really want to look as attractive as possible, so I can kind of seduce these people into like elevating their vibration, so to speak. No,
you'll use anything you got to do the work.
Yeah, exactly. I see. I'm so dedicated. Justice, like Mother Teresa. But you know, the destiny card system, which we'll talk about, is really fun because it is just based on your birthday. You don't need to know the time. And I do these little parties, and let's say people have like a really weird opinion about astrology, or they think it's magic, or they think it's like voodoo. I mean, there are a lot of dark things out there, you know, but they're all very different. I mean, I lived in Brazil for years. I studied many different things. It's all very intense. But, you know, I do these little 5-minute readings, and they hear it, how practical it is. And then they're set at ease more. They see it's not like I'm going to say, you're going to die in 10 days on a ping pong table. I mean, it's just, that's what people think it is a lot of times. So I really do love, like I do weddings, I do book club parties, I do parties for teenagers, and maybe they're even with trunk shows and different stuff going on. But I found that like that, creating it in a more casual way, it's less serious. It's not pulling up a big Western chart, you know, which is way beautiful and amazing, but like algebra and very complicated. So yeah, I found that this has helped me break through to more masses and masses of people. And it's just the playing cards after all, right? Like it's not that naughty, right?
It's crazy how you have to do that, you know, like because so many people aren't ready. It's so interesting. And
people got a lot of pain and suffering too, you know?
Yeah, it brings up a lot of that to be healed, which I guess is pretty scary I'm learning so much this week.
Aren't we all, it seems like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so do you want to get into that? Like 2 questions, kind of what are you seeing? Because I know you're doing all kinds of, like, we're so grateful to have you right now because you're doing like emergency readings. People are going through it. Like, everything that's going on in our country. We've got protests, we got riots, we've got oh my gosh, so much shame and anger. So I'm curious. I want to ask, like, what are you seeing? Are you seeing like same things coming up in everybody's charts that you're reading? And then we'll go into like what is going on as a collective for the planet, and how and why we're seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah. So, okay. First of all, in many different traditions, Western astrology, the Bible, human design, the 9-star key, which is Misho Kushi, who invented macrobiotics. That's a Japanese form of numerology. Really fun. 9-star key, which is KI, and you can even like Google it and find out yours. It's kind of like Enneagrams. But all these different systems, 9-star key believes in Japan that we are going into a great age of fire in 2032. The human design system, Ra would speak about going into this new mutation, a new program in 2026. 2026 is also a specific year coming up where Pluto is ending this transit with Capricorn that is creating this powerful upheaval and destruction. So unfortunately, in certain ways, it's really just starting in a lot of ways. Like, imagine that we are surfing out in one of those fancy places in Bali, and it's like a storm. Like, the big waves are not going to stop for a while. It doesn't mean it can't be fun, but you definitely don't want to be pulled under. There's a lot of explosive anger, many things that can happen over the course of the next 2 weeks that I think like people should be a little bit extra careful, maybe even in public places, because I understand the wanting to vent and the freedom and the everything being messed up. And, sometimes protests can be these amazing, I participated in a march here in Aspen and, music and beautiful solidarity, but rioting and tear gas and like, you need to go home to your family. It seems like things are going to continue to get out of hand. And yes, we're changing. When they say we're going into the age of Aquarius, what that means is physically, for the last 2,000 years or so, the sun has been physically rising in the constellation of Pisces, the fish, right? Jesus, Pisces is all about brotherhood, water, the great flood, all these different themes. Pisces is also sometimes the martyr, drugs, alcohol, confusing. It can be a very interesting time, and we're in a harsh Pisces.
A mutable sign, is that right?
Yeah. So, and that the problem with that is it's very explosive and it can change on a dime, which can be fantastic, like a Lamborghini, 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. But let's make sure it's not like barricading into a crowd. Oh, where's the Lamborghini directed? So Pisces now, right around since 2000, and these are gradual moves, right? These are 2,000 to 4,000 year cycles that are ending. And that's what I want people to understand. This is not like there's micro and then macro. What just happened on March 12th with the virus, which is also Pisces, Neptune, definitely virus, liquids, hidden, was almost the same astrology as 9/11. So there's the micro. So in that, there are other indicators that there are problems economically, but there are also going to be booms going on economically. And I hate to say, but a bunch of people are getting really rich right now and buying up depressed assets. And, so there will be certain booms economically like there was after 9/11. But on a macro scale, we're ending 2,000 to 4,000 year cycles. And all the religious books are saying the same thing, basically. So now the sun is inching its way. It's called the precession of equinoxes, so it goes backwards, into Aquarius. And this is what Age of, that great song I love so much. I'm going to listen to it after this because it is really good, actually. But Aquarius is not great. Ra used to talk about Aquarius too. Aquarius is what we're seeing now. Aquarius can be very detached. Has anybody ever dated an Aquarius man? No offense, but I mean, it can be very cool, detached. It's all about brotherhood and humanity, but also or not. And like, one of the things I heard some astrologers talk about is now that we're going into this age of Aquarius for 2,000 more years, it's technology and it's brotherhood, it's communication on a global scale. It's also not having compassion whatsoever. It's like the opposite of that Pisces, where Jesus is like, I'll wash the feet of the prostitutes. Now we're just totally can blindly ignore. It's more towards individualization. And that's what Rob would say in human design too, which is kind of
it's more what?
towards individualization and not the tribe anymore. Now it's about like the individual and then the global community. But for the last few hundred years, even in human design, it's been about the tribe taking care of people, even Pisces taking care of people. So we're not taking care of people anymore. Some people are, to kind of balance that scale. But like I travel for years all over. And I would say from 2005 to when I came back to America in like 2013 and 14, the amount of homelessness in every city in the West Coast was astonishing, and partially due to the opioids, right, which is also this detachment, not wanting to be in the emotional body because it's painful. And I remember thinking of this age of Aquarius where it's like we used to take care and now like people are almost numb to it, and you almost have to be numb to it because it's so overwhelming. I mean, I have to have cash on me all the time here in the Aspen area in the Roaring Fork Valley. I mean, there's guys standing outside in negative 20 degrees asking for money at the thing. I mean, it's unbelievable, let alone Denver. And so that's Aquarius too. Aquarius is harsh, it's totalitarian, it's dictator. So these movements that we're going through and watching as a society, I would say, hey, you really wanted the ticket to this movie. Don't ever forget that. And also, it's just a movie, and it will one day end. And you're not responsible for its success or failure either. But these
okay, you got to just unpack that a little bit. Number one, what did you just say? You bought a ticket to this ride. Please expand on that. And then two, it's not all your thing to carry. And what are you here to carry, please?
I would say you're pretty much not here to carry anything except some water in your backpack when you go for a hike. Other than that, the whole mental masturbation world, the guilt, the blame, I think it almost used to be useful to be in that, but the stories don't even matter anymore, So first of all, let's look at Hinduism. We're in the Kali Yuga, they say. And these are 200,000 years or something ages. So we used to have these great ages like we would think about in the Bible or before the fall of man. And in the Kali Yuga, now this would be like the fall of man, where Kali is the goddess of destruction. So what they said, even in these ancient Hindu books, which some of them are really cool, like the Lumerian scrolls and stuff, they say that at this time, humanity's population would explode, because the whole point of the Hinduism is that we come here to incarnate and burn off karma and learn and purify, and eventually we escape the wheels of consciousness and don't have to keep doing this anymore. But at this time is so intense, it's like burning off 10,000 lifetimes. So everybody wants to come. And this is what they were saying thousands of years ago would happen. So another thing they would say, which I find interesting, Kali is the female goddess, right? So women have been, for the last many thousand years, subjugated, prostituted, trafficked, burned at the stake, definitely desecrated. And then in other ways too, the goddess Kali is the negative side of women's wrath, manipulation, sexual manipulation. I mean, there's plenty of stuff going on, and you can see in all of the entertainment industry, I mean, women's wrath is really coming out, that's for sure. But I would also say, like, and I'm all about sexuality and freedom, don't get me wrong, but like the negative, degenerate side of sexuality, like the way that our pop stars were. I was just listening to some Stevie Nicks, and it was just like, this was pop music. But now, I don't know, it's just a little bit different. And I even have friends who are in that industry, and they want them to represent the negative archetype of the female. So there's this huge thing about women's sexuality, death, rebirth. And they say that during this time, the veils are so thin between the living, the unliving, the seen world, the unseen world, It's like Halloween every day, right? And that, if you want to go towards good, you can do it times 1,000. So think about this.
Thank you for saying that. Oh my God.
Well, if you and I can read holy books right now, we can literally Google them and order them to our houses. And like sometimes the old copies that people used to have to take a vow of silence and celibacy 1,000 years ago to even look at. So the veils are thin. We have access to unbelievable amounts of, the medical technology that really exists is incredible. And then if you want to be bad, you can be really, 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 really bad. And that people would be venerated. What's bad is good. What's good is bad. People are, for being wholesome or being kind, they're actually put down. In the age of the Kali Yuga, the people who are the sharkiest and most, self become the most successful. Well, I mean, look at our world, or like politics.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
Not all of them, but I mean, as an overall arching, let's say last 2,000 years in general, anyway. So,
or like people we might be seeing, big names on Instagram, for example, like the ones that I know who have a big name that I actually personally know. They're not the people that I want to be like.
Right. And sometimes too, that's a slippery slope, and it doesn't start that way. And that's what we all have to be careful of too. It's like, on this religious thing, I study comparative religions. I just wanted to figure out, what the hell is going on in this world. And none of the religions really say this is the good place. I really like that show, This Is the Good Place, with Ted Danson, where they think they're in heaven, but they're actually all in hell. And it's kind of like purgatory. And the way I look at it is like, okay, the Christians think the devil's the ruler of this world, and we've been cast down here, and we have had the fall of man. We didn't eat meat before, right? The fall of man was part of it. But the Jewish people believe the Messiah hasn't even come back yet. Things are going to get worse. Hindus believe we're in the Kali Yuga. And so even like the guy Don Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements, so good. He had a thing where he talks about how we all have to be warriors against the parasite that lives in our mind. And it feeds off of fear and negativity. Why is it so easy? Why is the world full of hatred and anger and death and destruction? Because most people are actually not that way. And especially when you meet them when they're children, like Confucius said, if the baby's like wandering around the edge of a well and the baby falls in, it's in man's nature to save the baby. Man's nature is good. I mean, people just want to protect themselves in their home, but then why is it so easy to get angry? And I know, like, I have a lot of Mars. You can feel this thing that feeds off of it. And I think it is like mold or a black goo. And I think that if people, I'm not saying took religion more seriously, but like even dabbled in like some of the stories as metaphors, all of them are saying like, be really vigilant and strong. And maybe like you're not depressed or bipolar or losing your shit or ruining your life. Maybe actually this is one of the most intense times that we could possibly be in. And like I always say, any day that you don't kill yourself or anybody else is a good day, and we keep having to wake up here. But yeah, eventually you're just going to die. And it's not like, all your bills are paid and your enemies are forgiven. Everything suddenly makes sense. And then you go, oh, I'm out of here. Unless you're like the Bodhisattva meditating on the mountain, which is, I guess, the whole point, right? That they just like poof out of their body. But yeah, I mean, this is tough times, man. And I think people don't realize it. And that's even in human design, the mind. Whose mind is it? Half the world meditates. It doesn't shut up the mind, but it makes you realize how ridiculous the dialogue is going on up there. Is that good for your inner child to listen to? Is it entertaining? Is that even how you feel? Or is that brainwashing and programming from other people based on fear and, self-reflexes?
Or trauma when you were young from 0 to 7 that is replaying and you're attracting it in your everyday life.
In your spinal system where it's still stored. And so then people have a hard time getting it out. So it's like that post-traumatic stress thing where, you hear the gun go off and immediately the memories of Vietnam come back. But there are supplements and ways that you can help the brain heal from that. Even things like 5-HTP, which is tryptophan, very inexpensive and plant-derived. It's the precursor to serotonin. It's what's in turkey that makes you sleepy. It's in pumpkin seeds, raw in high amounts. But yeah, there are ways to heal the brain, because now we're living in such a stressed out world. We might as well have all just gone to Vietnam, you know?
Yeah, would you, I mean, I have it written down, any other supplements, any other like active,
I think that Bach flower essence, he is a famous doctor. I would encourage anyone to read about his life. He was one of the most famous surgeons in the world. He created those flower essence that are for sale at like the health food stores. You can order them online. These are homeopathic, which is great too, because they don't interfere with medications, which is really good because people have other things they have to take. But there's one called Rescue Remedy. They actually used to give it to people up in hospitals as Valium, basically, up until we had things like Valium. And it can stop bleeding. I mean, it's incredibly powerful. But you can even just take that because it's homeopathic on a regular basis. That costs under $20. I would also say good quality amounts of melatonin. You can get, I would say, parasite flushes. Pretty much everybody I've ever taken to get blood work done. Or, I mean, if we've ever walked barefoot, we have parasites and stuff. So they create toxins, and think about it even energetically. You don't want, the more that you can get rid of these parasites spiritually, mentally, emotionally, like, you know, sometimes even I tell people, like, I'm a big proponent of, you know, colonics and things like that, because all the medications we've had, birth control, all the estrogen collects right there. And I was, you know, all the bubble gum was swallowed back in the day. And
sand and Play-Doh.
Yeah, right, or all kinds of stuff. And think about when you're upset, you're like, you know what I mean? Over. And when you see that stuff come out of you, whether it's through enemas or a parasite flush or colonics, you look at that stuff and you're like, that was in me? And then in a certain way, I feel like it can help people emotionally release that as well. I mean, sure, if you have a parasite living in your guts, which everybody does, don't you think that's going to be a little irritating mentally and emotionally? It'd be like having scabies. Like, how are you going to try to relax, you know?
Well, and if we are, if all this stuff is, if we all really are one and we all come from the same thing, then it's all just a reflection, you know, in a different form.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Thank you for that. I also want to ask you before we close, like these texts you just talked about, you know, these spiritual books that could bring in enlightenment that, you know, a woman, for example, wouldn't have even been allowed to see, or like
so the Tibetan Book of the Dead, unbelievable. I mean, just peruse it. You don't need to like get into it. You don't need to get a master's in it. You just look at some of the stuff and you're like, some ancient awakening is happening. But
I love it. That's what we're here to be.
Exactly. And actually that's handy to have around too, because there's prayers in there to do for when someone is dying to release their spirit, and that you can do for them, like a friend or a family member. Yeah. And so that's a beautiful one. The Lumerian scrolls, which are, I used to live in Kauai for a long time, and there's these, they believe that the Hawaiian Islands are the mountain peaks of Lemuria. And there's these amazing Hindu temples there, but you can get these books anywhere. But the Lumerian scrolls in particular is the really neat one, where it's ancient and thousands of years old, and they're like showing UFOs and people flying in the sky and in like crazy, amazing technology. So those are fascinating, and that's where they talk about the age that we live in now, and they talk about old golden ages that we used to be in, and we'll go into a golden age eventually as well. And then obviously studying human design. I used to live in Ibiza as well. That is where it's from. That changed my life. So the official book of human design from Ra, I feel like his words are the most important too. It's really, the language is just incredible. And then also even the Gnostic Gospels, the lost Gospels of Thomas. There's cool things where you can just get courses, and Harvard just released hundreds and hundreds of free, complete, hundreds of hours of courses online. And I looked them up to see like what some of them were. And it's like the entire philosophy department. And there's coding and all kinds of computer stuff. But, you know, comparative religion or the history of Christianity, I think would be good for people to even hear some of those books that didn't quite make the cut for some reason, maybe because it wasn't part of the slave agenda. And then the the Tao Te Ching, and the
I was
I
going
Ching.
to ask you. So does this all align with the Tao Te Ching? All of, the sun?
Yes. So even in these Asian beliefs, we're definitely in this powerful period of transformation for sure. That the 9-star key, which is Ki, and that guy Mishukushi is the father of macrobiotics, and he healed and saved all those people's lives after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Those are great books. And then anything, these are, I mean, of course, my jam, but Robert Camp's books, the love cards and the, here. Where's my camera? This is funny. The love cards, and then the cards of destiny, which is the ones that you use to read each year. But those books changed my life significantly from that approach of astrology.
And I know you've been studying this for so long. And like you said, it is so complicated. So props to you. And also, it must be, I'm curious, just because we're in this time of, and I want to get to next, of like your readings of what is going on right now, because it's insane. And supposedly, as you say, it's not going to get easier. So to prepare us, but also just like give you a chance to talk about the ways in which maybe you were judged by the way you look, or held lesser than in some way, or had to prove yourself in a different way, like any other ways, just to give anyone who might be watching a perspective that's not from their own, even though it's a white blonde girl.
Oh yeah, too. I mean, I traveled Brazil for years too, so there's all kinds of, interesting things going on there with racism on many levels. Okay, well, so basically, first of all, I'm adopted. So if you ever look at my chart, would see I'm a super weirdo. But I started getting readings when I was a teenager. And one of the first ones they said was, you never met your mom. And I was like, how could you know that for my birthday? So obviously that intrigued me. And then I started studying palm reading. I always found fun. My mom and dad, God bless them, who I love so much, that raised me, they were always into like psychics and fun stuff. So we'd go around a little bit. And so I knew a bit about my chart and my Western chart. And then when I was 20, I got flown to Kauai to do speech therapy with autistic children. And this lady gave me a reading. I was like, we'll get a reading. It's based off of this system, which is the original use of the 52 card deck. It actually has always been a birthday calendar, as you and I know, and it predates the tarot. So it's also in the Bible many times, the little book of the Seven Thunders. So she gives me this reading, and I'm like, damn, that sounds just as crazy as my Western chart does. That's very accurate. And it was so funny because I was like, I'm here. I'm going to do my contract and work with the kids. And then I'm going to go like travel Europe or blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, you're not. You're going to stay here and be working really hard, because you can see each year of the transits. Mm-hmm. And at the time, of course, my mind, right, you have all these ideas. What do they say? You want to make God laugh? Tell him your plans. So I ended up securing one of the only long-term rentals in Honolulu Bay, staying, working very hard. And because this little book, and Robert, who's a business partner and friend of mine I love so much, kept saying over and over again that I was very gifted in music. So I picked up the guitar and I started playing music, and then I became a very well-known musician. I got to play with some of the best musicians in the world because they live in Kauai. And I became a musician. I became who I was. And it's funny because speaking of, like my teacher said the other day, it was so funny, Rosie, if we felt good about ourselves, we'd never get out of bed in the morning. It's out of fear of the future, need for approval, insecurity, that we become charming and talented and build houses and grow better crops. Fear is a really good thing. So if I didn't have a need to prove myself or be liked, or didn't feel insecure, or didn't have such a difficult childhood and chart, I would have never become a musician or all these different things to get approval from people. And once I did that, you realize that's not where it's at, and nobody can ever kind of give you anything. But the weakness led me to the gift. And so then you look at all these things where I think of myself as, insecure, or, it's so hard and I'm being punished, or it's always going to be hard. And I'm like, no, in this damn book, it said it was hard for the first 29 years, and then it's easy. Like the weather changes. And like, whatever. People
Gives
could
you
think
something to hang on to.
something to hang on to and something to look forward to. And for me, this system, I already had studied Western, but it's complicated. I teach people Western now, but this system is amazing because A, it's the playing cards, which are totally inundated in our society everywhere with gambling.
That article you wrote was the first time I learned about that. Would you just give we only have like 15 more minutes, and I want to make sure that you get to the reading, but like this blew my mind when I read this article that you had written in this prominent magazine, and yeah, just share what that is, because that's like insane.
Yeah. So
why are we not told this? It's really
maybe we can have the when we broadcast this, put up the image of the calendar of how it's laid out, like I've sent you before, so everybody can look up their birthday.
Yeah,
see how it's laid out.
Yeah.
So okay, so I didn't know this either. So the 52 cards predate the tarot, right? So obviously the tarot has the major arcana on top of it. But back in the day in Europe, we were not allowed to play pinochle or poker. The cards were gypsy and they were outlawed. They were outlawed by the churches in all the countries. But Napoleon was obsessed with this system, and he had a very famous card reader who was historically famous named Mademoiselle Lenormand, and it's the Lenormand method. And her readings for him are written down in history, and she even predicted that he would die in the last battle, and he went anyway, hence the Napoleon complex, right? So he decided he would let the French people start playing games with them under the guise of not fortune telling and Roman gypsy, but just a form of amusement. And lots of people wanted to do that anyway, but it was not allowed, right? And of course, people wanted to gamble and all that stuff. And they're like, no, no, no. So he lets the French people do it, which is very taboo. Love the French. So I was like, oh, so cutting edge. And then he inundates them into society. Over time, we forget what they're really for. Certain mutations happen. The tarot comes around and nobody remembers anymore what they're actually about. And so even in society, so here's a great example. Me and you, Lindsay, there's a calendar for the world, right? Just like there's a calendar for what's happening for everybody right now, let alone us. So in the calendar for the world, your and my card sit in the center, which is what should the center of human creation be, is the Queen of Clubs, which is service through knowledge, the Mother Mary card, forgive them for they know not what they do, direct connection to psychic pursuits. And then in the material world, that is mirrored by your card, the 10 of Diamonds, which is the card of success in finances, business, but also a master of values, what's important to people. So in the material world, the way this plays out, it would be like this great charity. Like this is how the world is supposed to be. But that's been twisted into manipulation of spiritual knowledge for gain, and then incredible amounts of opulence, but a resource distribution problem, right? So if we picked a day, like let's say we pick just, January 4th, that day is the day of the 10 of spades, no matter what year, and it's a good day to sign a contract. You see, so it's fixed like this. And yeah, the system is incredibly accurate, incredibly easy. And then I also, after years of doing this, went into business with Robert Camp, and we made a weekly reading kit so that you could do your own weekly readings using the system. And this is how I memorized the system. And it was my great honor to meet him and go into business with him. And interestingly enough, in human design, he's a reflector, which is only 1% of the world, totally white and open. So anyways, yeah, so then this system helped, does not go. And then after I studied this for years, now going back to the design in the Western is much, much easier.
Okay, do you want to give people a place that they can go look for that, look for their card right now? And then, of course, like you said, we'll post.
Yeah, we'll post the graphics. So my website is destinycardproducts.com. And I also have, Rosie Cutter, ROSEY and ROSIE, my Gemini moon dual personalities, asking my exes now. We just had to do both names for copyright reasons. And then Yeah, the Instagram, I post lots of funny memes and stuff. They can look up my articles on the Destiny Card Products website. They can check things out. I'm willing to work with anybody. So, whatever prices you see, just message me directly.
Well, and it sounds fun. Like you said, you have to like kind of make it playful. And so what a fun thing to do for a bachelorette or any sort of gathering.
Yeah, any sort of gathering.
For young girls. Like, yeah, it sounds awesome.
Birthday presents. And even these days, I'm doing Zoom parties.
Right.
And everybody's doing the thing, and then they're each getting the mini reading and then going and doing that after.
But you're so busy too, right? Like we are so lucky that we've got an hour of your time right now because like you said, you are being bombarded by everyone coming to you for emergency readings. So can we get into like what is going on the planet? Oh my gosh.
So yeah, there's a bunch of, so squares usually are tendencies towards violence and towards extremes. Imagine it's like you're in the desert and you're really hot. So over the next few weeks, everybody's going to be a bit extra irritable. We have 3 eclipses, which is unusual.
In the next few weeks, there's 3? Mm-hmm. Oh, Lord.
Usually there's 2. So, this is, when the Mayans used to just sacrifice people, so now they don't like it. So,
way to lighten it up.
Yeah, right. So, as an overall, so people can understand, the last 18 months has been, interestingly enough, the North Node was in Cancer, which means the South Node is in Capricorn. Whatever's not working in our Capricornian, male-dominated institutions, banking, structures, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all been reworked, and it wanted us to go more towards Cancer, the feminine, the children. All of a sudden, everybody had to stay at home with their kids. Interesting, right? Are you happy with your home? Are you happy with your community? What if you had to stay there a lot more, right? So that's been going on for the last 18 months. And Uranus is the planet of electricity. The year that Uranus was discovered, it's Uranus, not Uranus. But you can say whatever you want, but people are saying.
And it's not Uranus either.
Uranus. Oh, yeah. I can't even say it right. I've said it wrong. I've said it astrology.
You're too professional.
I don't want to say anus. I don't want to ruin the money or ruin the moment and have them say anus in the middle of the thing and they don't like it. So anyways, we'll take that out. So Uranus is the planet of electricity. And Uranus is lightning bolt, unexpected, unusual communications, Aquarian, computers, technology. Uranus takes 84 years to move to a new sign. And it just moved last year to Taurus, which is our banking structures. So we're going to have major upheaval in banking structures, gas, oil, the way that money is traded. Obviously, we're going towards a cashless society. This entire thing is only pushing that more. According to Ra, even in 2026 and 2027, we are moving towards an age where the fertility rates have plummeted. I don't know if people really realize this, but really we're not having children anymore in the same way. And and some people are like, what do you mean? I accidentally have 3 kids. God bless it then. But in general, we are moving towards an age of petri dish babies. It's like Gattaca in a certain way. And people are choosing to not carry. People are choosing to not have kids. And also more and more children are being born, deformed. So Ra would even say that the new wave of children being born are going to be telepathic. They're not going to need to eat. They're not going to need to have sex. They're not going to communicate. They're going to communicate telepathically. And that all sounds far-fetched, but I worked with autistic children for years. So many different disabilities are coming in. All these kids on different cerebral palsy. What spectrum are they on? Are they communicating on a different level? And then we're saying they're disabled and, it's just... So,
are they? You were working with them. Are they? I know that's an important thing.
Yeah, it's definitely 100%. And unfortunately, it's only growing in numbers despite better food.
Well, why is it unfortunate if they are communicating another way, they're actually higher beings?
Right. If this is where we're going, we have to meet reality at reality's place. We can't try to change it in certain ways. If the river is flooding, you can just stand there and scream and say it's not flooding and drown, or you can accept it's flooding and go. Yes, they're definitely, I would work with kids who were mathematical geniuses, but just couldn't quite figure out socialization and stuff like that. And I think a lot of the geniuses back in the day would have been considered on the spectrum, so to speak. But yes, is this the new way? And here's another thing that I think you worry about too. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work, obviously, to have a child with special needs. And we do a lot of scanning now. And we do a lot of ultrasounds to detect if there's any abnormalities in the genes. Well, let me tell you something. When I lived in Kauai and I used to nanny for these families. And I know 3 families, personally, who were a little, not much older, but in their 30s. So, of course, they do all these tests. And they're like, oh, we got to make sure, blah, blah, blah. And all 3 families were told that their child was going to have Down syndrome and there was a chromosomal abnormality. And they didn't have any kids. They decided they all wanted their kid. They didn't care, against strong recommendation. And all the kids are drop dead gorgeous and perfectly fine. So what's going on? Is there a genetic change happening in the DNA? And is our scanning technique maybe a little too broad? Because that is disturbing, you know? So not to say that somebody shouldn't have the choice, because to know what you're getting into, to have a Down syndrome child, of course. But I mean, I think these things are all much more complicated than we realize with our battlefield of medicine and science. So yes, we're kind of going into this new time, and we also are going to see more. So speaking back to the North Node, it just shifted into Gemini, which is a Gemini-Sagittarius axis, which basically means international travel over the next year and a half is going to be limited or harder, Sagittarius, and it's going to be more about Gemini, your local places, hitting the streets, communicating with people. And this can be really wonderful in a lot of ways, people appreciating what they have around them. It's hard because, I mean, people were asking me back in 2012 when things were going to lighten up. And I mean, the science fiction horror movie has just taken so many turns since then. Holy crap. I saw a meme today that was like, back in 2015, no one was correct when they said where they saw themselves in 5 years. All right. I mean, nobody could have imagined this. So, is it hellfire and damnation? For some people, it already is. If you were caught up in those riots and you were killed and your place was looted, right now it is the apocalypse, And so my strong suggestion, and there are many different astrologers that you can look up. I like Rick Astrohawk. I like Pele. Kaipachi has been doing it forever. And they do like a report every week for the whole world. And they're not saying this because of any sort of political leaning or agenda. But over the next few weeks, even if this wasn't happening, the propensity towards violence and confusion and even explosions, because Neptune rules gases and fire, and you see, so it's just, be careful where you put yourself out there, because like I said, you can do a lot more work in this world than out.
You're such a truth teller, and it's what we want, and it is also so hard to hear this stuff. Like,
everybody would like to hear that magically there's going to be conjunction next week and all this stops, but
we know it can't, because we know there's a lot wrong. And I know this is also going on internally, not just externally.
As above, so below, And here's the idea too. It's not about being a harbinger of bad news. I mean, first of all, what people think doesn't matter, because 10 years ago, people's thoughts about the way the world was is probably totally different than it is now. And the mind is very, we think what we're told to think, so it's hard for people to accept that the world was already as dark as it was in the first place. And that's what's coming out. And that's why
you just said we are taught, we think what we are taught to think.
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, I did applied behavior analysis, which is, speech therapy that you basically is the same thing they use on horses and dogs. I can brainwash a child to be able to speak. I can brainwash people to be able to believe in themselves. I went to school for advertising and marketing at FIT. I mean, we're told to think, I myself have had thoughts that I base my entire life around, which is why the human design is so great, to be like, hey, wait a minute. Yes, we can read The Secret and you can manifest. But what do you really want to manifest? Are you sure? Why don't you taste a little bit of it before you buy the factory? But, the mind is not our friend. And people have a hard time accepting what's happening right now in astrology. This Pluto is dredging up all of the power, darkness, control, death, and rebirth, hidden things that are happening. And it's like cleaning out a wound and dumping some iodine in it, and it burns for a bit, but it's for the best. And it's hard because we have a lot of parasites in this society, energetically, morally, physically, spiritually. There's no reason that people, you could give everybody a bag of rice. I mean, give me a break. Like, there's no reason that this has to be such a power struggle planet. And I think that people have been in a, when you have post-traumatic stress, you can't see the bigger picture because you're just surviving. And so what's coming up now is, it's not even that it's going to get worse. It's not that it's getting worse. Actually, it's getting better in certain ways. It's just everybody has to acknowledge how bad it was. And that's very painful. This is not fun. I mean, some of the things I'm sure people are, with all their free time, checking out and stuff. And, and man isn't evil, but it's good to know there's evil around so you can protect your kids. And so you can kind of make sure and be more vigilant. Not everybody's operating off of the same integrity level. And it's funny because I have a lot of friends and clients who have North Node in Gemini. Donald Trump has North Node in Gemini. And so the North Node is moving in Gemini right now. And in certain ways, I tell these people, because I have like the Scorpio, I'm like really dark. That's why I like all this stuff. I'm like always like, I don't believe and trust anybody. And so then everyone finds out. But then I use it for good things, and now I've learned to relax in it. But I tell my friends who have the North Node in Gemini, they need to learn to be more suspicious and skeptical. Because Sagittarius is like, oh, it's all good, it's fine, everything's great. No, it's not great. Check the facts. And over the next 18 months, we're more like, no, it's not great. There's things that are not great that are happening for lots and lots of people. And let's Gemini communicate. Gemini get together as the twins and help each other see how we're all mirrors for each other. And, I have seen so many unbelievable videos of cops and protesters just embracing and having incredible healing. My own hometown in Schenectady and Rotterdam, which is, there are places that are pretty inner city, and it's pretty high tensions there. In Albany too, and they were marching the police with the people, holding the signs. The kids were crying. The kids were so happy. So we have to watch more of that too, because like even when I was watching the rides and all the stuff, it motivated me to go be with my friends in Aspen and participate. But that's also a fear, and the fear is a fuel, and it's good. Like, let it light your little butt up and go. But like, you don't drink 25 cups of coffee a day. Let it light you up and get you going, but don't let it eat at your spirit or your chi, because it's just, people are better. And it's funny how they show us like the same 5 clips over and over and over again of all the gnarliness. And then meanwhile, I see people rafting down the river here. See, people are trying to make it work. I see,
Yeah,
so
all the helpers, all the positive.
all the helpers. Why isn't this on the Channel 9 news? Why is it only in my Facebook feed for my friend?
Well, and do you want to talk about that a little more? Like why somehow media stations who are feeding on numbers are feeding on that fear bit in our head, or that parasite that wants to see it, and we need it. So like, is the mission to like see it and expose it, and then, or I guess it's just like, what's the point?
Well, with the applied behavior analysis, all behavior is attention seeking. A dog would rather be hit than not touched at all. So in certain ways, we need to not be reinforcing these negative behaviors.
Well, say that again.
We need to not be reinforcing these negative behaviors. We can be addicted to fear porn. We can be addicted to, but let me give an example. We can leave people with this as a visceral. So, there's these things called Carolyn Photography, right? And maybe we can find a visual for them. So this is like, we learned it in like 7th grade science, but it's when they take a picture of like a banana and it gives off the light photons, and then they put the banana in the microwave and then it doesn't give off as many, right? It's the photons that are coming off of all living beings. Even if it's not living, it's the light, the energy, the sunlight source coming off of even fruit after it's picked. So you're giving off photons all the time. So you could do Carolyn light photography on yourself. And if you're in love and if you're happy, you actually can see these photons being emitted like little electricity sparks. You know how sometimes you hit something and get static electricity, especially here in Colorado, it's so dry, you do it a lot. It's like, yeah, look, you have electricity coming off your hands. Duh, this is some magical stuff here. So you've got these electrons and these photons shooting off you. When you're in pain, like if I took a knife and cut you, you give off a hell of a lot more photons. Fear and pain is a much higher voltage energy source. So, Soylent Green is people, we're being farmed for our emotions. And I believe in righteous anger and melancholy. I think it's the greatest art and music, and all these things comes from this. And there's going to be incredible epiphanies that come out of it too.
And art.
But I'm not down with violence, because I'm not down with some people going out and trying to connect with their community and ending up getting their head bashed in. I mean, basically, we've got the slaves arguing over who's the better slave owner and killing each other over it. Great. A bunch of low-paid cops. The Rothschilds used to say, buy when there's blood in the streets. Well, I guess they always make sure there keeps being blood in the streets to keep the market. It's right. It's just, so don't be a pawn or fodder for the machine. And it's not about, be with your anger, sit with your anger, do something positive with it, exercise, make art, make music. But in my heart, and this is only my mere opinion, and everyone can do whatever they feel is their I just wouldn't tell people to go into a building that was full of explosives, and that's how I feel about the astrology of the next few weeks and the rest of the month is like, and leaders are really listening. Change is going to happen. That's part of the Gemini too. We're actually going to be able to make more of an effect, but we can make more of that effect in a loving, peaceful way. And then leave the looters to just themselves anyway. And then that gets taken care of. And there's not innocent people trying to just demonstrate getting swept up in this mania,
Okay, so what I hear you saying is, one, be careful. There's this fiery energy that's going on, literally explosive, and we don't mean that to be a fear thing, but seems like really reel it in and stay grounded and do what you take care of yourself and your family, and then don't get swept up in what's going on. How might this be showing up internally? Because obviously these planets are activating us in lots of ways. Yeah, just what can we do as individuals right now? And then also just your opinion on, there's so much shaming going on, saying, if you don't, you're getting it, I'm getting it. I've definitely posted things and getting the shame no matter what I post. And also that whole, if you don't say something, if you don't act, then you're part of the problem. So there's this.
But this is like the times from the Bible where brothers turned on brothers. Well, first of all, my greatest gift in life is that I don't give a fuck, and I never have. And I used to be a huge asshole, which all my friends know. And that was, the softest creatures have to create the hardest shell to protect themselves, sort of a thing. But I have only pure individual channels in human design. And there's a lot of things in my chart. I have a south node in the first house. So it says I come into this life with a tremendous confidence, arrogance even. And so that, it's funny because for me, it's me. It's the car I drive. But when I'm counseling people and doing work with people, most of what I need them to do is just not care what other people think, or let go of toxic family ties, or huge. And I'm like, wow, this was so easy for me. And I think possibly because I'm adopted and I have this different perspective, and my design is much different. But I'm going to tell you what, like we were joking about earlier, I work with a lot of people who are doing unbelievable things, famous charity people. You can feed all the children in Africa, and there will be haters that come out. And you know what? You can always tell the stature of a man by the stature of his enemy. I used to be a professional musician around the world, and people either loved me or hated me, right? And that was how the astrology helped with that, of how to work with it and how to bring energy in a way that if I'm triggering people's insecurities or inadequacies or secret desires to be a musician themselves, I can help them do it and manifest it and not get reactive like the way that they want us all to be, especially women, against each other. But, you really have to just not, people are going to get nastier and nastier, and the opinions, everybody got so many opinions about a lot of things that we're not even quite sure about. There's a lot of confusion about it. I hate to say too, but most people don't even know, they can't even show me in their body where their liver or their kidney is. People have no idea how the human body works, how viruses work anyway. So then like we're all fighting over all the stuff that's like, you know, and it's taking away from being in the moment. I would say in certain ways it's a distraction. We have to be careful the little devils aren't trying to distract us from catching the really big wave. You know, I always found surfing funny because you have to triangulate yourself, right? So just like life, you can set out having the right intentions and being in the right spot, but what's the ocean constantly trying to do? Put you into the gutter. It's actually trying to suck you into the worst possible spot you could be. Just the nature of the ocean, not because it doesn't like you or anything. It's just what it does. So you constantly have to be keeping and paddling and triangulating to stay in that right spot. And so I would also say, like, and this is big for me, you know, a queen of clubs, I is very sometimes intolerant of other people, but like being more compassionate, biting our tongue more, doesn't matter if we're right. Like sometimes people are saying things and I can tell they're trying to engage me in an argument, blah, 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 and I'll just change the subject. I'd rather just have a nice dinner. I'm already exhausted from dealing with my clients all day long anyway. So like, let's not catch the hot potato of other people's bullshit and feed into that fear. And as silly as it sounds, a big recommendation, as you know, I have in the readings a lot of times is regardless of the world, sometimes we're just at the low end of the wave. So this is definitely a collective low end of the wave. And so there's one thing about like processing, but imagine if we have a little kid and something bad happens and we're in a stressful situation like right now. By the way, do this with your kids and then think about your inner kid. So if something happens, it's bad. We're definitely going to talk about it and acknowledge it. And then what do we do with the kid? Usually we try to distract them and do other things to put their mind on something else because we know time does heal all wounds. We wouldn't bring up to the child every 10 minutes that the world is going to end. We messed up our lives. We have no money. We're getting a divorce. But we do that to ourselves in our head all the time. So as silly as it is, sometimes, you know, I'm like, hey, let's make a list of the saddest movies and the darkest art and music, and maybe indulge and maybe distract yourself and maybe find a way that you can tangibly help some families in your community, help some people that are disadvantaged, go, you know, to a food bank, something like this, make some amazing art. But I just, you know, if you're in a relatively mellow place, okay, you know, Aspen's protests are, I don't feel like that I don't put yourself up like a lamb to the slaughter in a city, you know, and then you got to reset the whole button and come back here again. So I would say, as people might call it a cop out or whatever, but I don't care. Like in certain times, you have to just hunker down. You don't jump out of the ship in the middle of the storm. And on a personal level, like people could be fighting a lot of secrets could be coming out. A lot of communication can be had that needs to be had. Venus is going direct at the end of the month. Don't make any changes to your appearance if possible, major purchases, or try to break up with anybody before June 25th. Because there's a lot of just, what do we love? I don't know. Let me think about it. Do I want this? Do I love this? So there's a lot of stuff is in limbo. And so honestly, like if you can veg out, like aren't we realizing too, like as somebody who loves to travel the world and do all this stuff, like I've never been more happy to just have a place to be safe.
And finally, like take that time to appreciate this gift that you gave yourself, which is living in the mountains.
In somewhere safe. But yeah, I was always worried that it was going to go down. Where was I going to be stuck? But you know, it's also just on a level of like, how much do we really even need? Do we need to go travel the world and blah, 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 blah? Actually, it's enough to just like have a safe, calm, dry place right now and be thankful, because there's lots of places right now where all those poor people are living in their cities and they're having the riots happening outside their door and they can't go anywhere. And it's not groovy for them, you know?
And that's where we can act with a donation. And I am definitely looking at all of these nonprofits to donate
Yeah,
to.
there's so many.
That might be the biggest thing that we can do from where we are right now.
Exactly. Yeah, post those and help. Also just being there for people and just hearing their stories, you know. If it's the blame thing and the anger thing, I don't think that's getting anybody anywhere. But I'm all about, like, you know, some of my friends are just, you know, just processing, like,
Yeah.
wow.
Most people are just processing. Yeah.
It's so beautiful to actually see this being acknowledged. And I will say, like, as a white girl from America, when I moved down to Brazil, and especially when I was in the North, was the first time I ever experienced being the only person of color, of one color, and having thousands of other people of another color, and how that felt. And, you know, it's not, I mean, this is like, it's just,
It's real. It's real.
and it's also, what kind of planet is this that we would subjugate anybody at any time? This is not who we are. We have to wake up from this collective dream of, you know, this collective nightmare. But I think that that's what's happening, and I don't think smashing windows or each other's faces and can necessarily help. So being loving, taking care of yourself, and yeah, if we can make it through this eclipse season and get, you know, we're probably going to have some kind of reprieve a little bit in July, August, and then around the time of the elections, the social distancing will probably come back and the virus. And yeah, so be prepared for another wave of that.
Anything else that you can give us to look forward to?
Well, you know, like David Lynch said, one of my favorite directors of all time, the hardest thing for human beings to accept is that none of this makes any sense. I'm like, yeah, like you're various. But I mean, what is this? We go to sleep. You can have an orgasm in your sleep. You can, I woke up, I've been having a lot of apocalyptic dreams lately. I'm like, oh, is there something coming through the damn Netflix? Because a lot of people have been saying that. But, you know, when you're asleep, you think that's real. People have heart attacks in their sleep.
Yeah.
So we're there for half of our lives almost. And then we wake up and go, oh, that's not real, this is. I mean, you know, what you have to look forward to is our lives and every day. And, you know, it's nobody gets out of here alive anyway. What was the big haboo about? You know, it's like, we're not responsible for this. It's not like we're going to die and God's going to be like, hey, Lindsay, by the way, you were supposed to stop Revelation in the apocalypse there. I thought that maybe your content wasn't lacking enough to inspire people. I don't know if I could let you into heaven. Let me ask St. Peter. No. I mean, it's just like whatever's going on. I mean, we've subjugated ourselves to this. We deserve a compensation check when this is done. I hope that that's what we can look forward to.
Well, I think something you said earlier too, like we asked for this ticket to get on this ride in some capacity.
Yep.
And it is just a ride. It is just a movie. Like, and we can choose to be in the highest vibration regardless of what's going on around us. And that might be all we can control.
Yeah, all we can really control is what we put in our mouth and what comes out of it, actually.
Mm.
And also, you know, there is a beauty in the pain and in the suffering, and make art with it, is what I would say. Or either, you know, making art or exercising, I found, are the two best uses of anger. Nothing feels better than, like, you know, I was already so intense my whole life. And then once I finally learned to play guitar and stuff, being able to like play like Creep by Radiohead or something, trust me, nothing feels better than being super depressed and sad and feeling overwhelmed by your life and spazzing out on some of your favorite music or painting or whatever we can do, and to be there for each other too. I'm real worried about people's mental health. I'm glad things are opening up. I kind of feel like that's giving people a light at the end of the tunnel. But, you know, stay safe. And
I heard that this time will actually activate people's mental unwellness, and that's when you're going to see a lot of projection, a lot of hate, and that's a reflection of what's going on.
And that's what Gemini is arguing too. I mean, you know what I mean? So you don't want to, yeah, in Pisces, this is all very confusing. I mean, that's the thing, is like imagine the confusion. The time we're in right now is almost like we're drunk, okay? So we've had some drinks. And so we had drinks to loosen up.
And then we're activated.
And everything is confusing. And sometimes you start crying, or sometimes you start yelling for no reason. You didn't get drunk to like figure out your life or sign any contracts. You got drunk to kind of have fun and see where it takes you. And maybe you end up just eating some Cheetos and taking a nap. Like, that's what I would say this time is like, whether you want to or not, it's feeling like you're drunk. And so
everything's off or on the table. It's like just unappropriate things. You can fight, you can cry, you can do all the things.
Everything's on the table, exactly. as like, and try not to like say things to people that you really don't mean, because it's, you know, like we do when we're drunk, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's
Right.
it's definitely, but it can be very fun, and it can be very playful, and it can be very like, you know, nostalgic. Like, you know, it's like when you're in the bathroom and you just love every girl that comes in. That's what it can be like too. You know, everybody's like, I'm so sorry, Rome is burning. I'm so glad we're here to hang out together. It can be like that too. Yeah, and it's not like it's going to get day to day worse, and it's going to come in these waves, man. But you know, it's good for us to know that you're always loved and protected, and it is going to be okay no matter what happens. We just return to the dirt anyway. So
I definitely want to, you know, use any privilege that I have to like make sure that some changes are made, you know, like and that's something I'm pretty fired up on, you know, whether it's writing 1,000 letters, calling a bunch of times. I know that when we use our voices, we make change on behalf of the environment and socially too. So I'm definitely going to act, definitely learning more about just highlighting unicorns as much as I can, especially that are not necessarily white. And that's how I, you know, on
I like that. All multicolored unicorns. You should do like a hoodie line. I got a new hat line coming out. Oh my gosh, we can have the multicolored unicorns on it.
Done. I mean, I've been making unicorns out of all animals, right?
I've been seeing that. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for hanging out today and just being this strong force, because it is downright scary, and you make it fun, which is really cool. What a gift.
Yay. Well, great. Well, if anybody wants personal consultations, just Google me, Rosie Cutter or Destiny Card Products. And yeah, I do readings of all kinds. Most of them are over the phone and recorded.
Do you feel like there's anything else you want to share? I know that, you know, the children that you've worked with, you wanted to talk about. Did you feel like you shared that?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think everybody, if that's what I mean, is like we can make things happen. Well, I want everybody just to do it from a safe place. Like, how about we have people that also, let's meet up and like have potlucks together as a community and organize how we're going to change this, because, you know,
how we're going to take care of our communities.
Our community, yeah. Not destroying businesses is not necessarily helping, and I get where it's coming from, but it's also just very scary, you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll make sure to share your info, and yeah, thanks again for your time, especially in this crazy time. Hopefully we'll make it through Friday.
Yeah.
It all supposedly peaks, and I'm sure. Yeah. And when is the golden age coming, though? Like, are we going to be alive, or is that
supposed to be in the Cali user for like another 100,000 years? So.
Oh, is that all? Okay. All right.
That's what Robert told me.
All right. All right. Love you, Rosie. From the mountains.
Love you too. Have a wonderful day. Power to the people. Power to the people together.
Hell yeah.